go take a look at the garden plot. Okay, here we are. So the corn looks pretty good this year. Been feeding it a lot, and I'm hoping that for lunch we can have some today. These were the first ones to tassel, so I'm going to try these first. I always hate doing this because once you unwrap them, you can't rewrap them correctly, and the birds and the bugs find them. So I hope I'm right about them being ready. Let's see. We're having corn for lunch today. How's that look? Not bad, huh? Find one more. That one's a little less ripe, but I think we'll like it just fine. So, let's take a walk back in the plot and see what we've got. The plot is about 12 feet wide, and I broke it into strips of about 4 feet per bed. So the first bed was the corn. The next bed we've got some nice oregano here, which is far past, but we already dried plenty of that, so we're good. And then we've got the peppers. Got a nice bell pepper here. You can see a nice cluster in there. I had a lot of problems with fungus on the peppers and on the tomato leaves. You can see here's a leaf that fell off, and I learned a lot about how to take care of that, how to spray them with copper. That's the organic solution to getting rid of the fungus. You want to put this mulch down, which will keep the water where all the spores are. You want to keep mulch down and keep that dirt from splashing up on the leaves. And the other thing is, when you get these leaves, you want to get them off, because it's another way of getting rid of the fungus spores, because they're full of that stuff. And what I usually do is put them under a piece of black mulch, and the heat will destroy them. Will destroy the fungus. So these are the bell peppers here. We've got some serranos here, a nice sweet chili pepper. And there's a couple that are getting pretty big. So hopefully a couple more weeks we'll have some nice serranos. And down here I had just a little bit of space, and I put some cabbage seedlings that I started around the beginning of July in. And I don't know if they'll really do anything. It's getting pretty late in the year, but we'll see. Little tiny guys. And right over here we've got the sweet potatoes. Those are grown on a nice mound of dirt with plastic over the top. I've heard that the clear plastic actually works a little better at heating the soil, more of a solar collector effect. And but I had some black plastic, so that's what I used. And it keeps the weeds down, heats up the soil, and keeps excess moisture out, because you don't want the sweet potatoes getting too wet or they won't concentrate on growing nice fat roots. So those look pretty decent. There's 3 different heirloom varieties here, and I got high hopes for good sweet potatoes. The next plot over, the next bed, is my tomato bed. And again, these were really hit bad with the fungus early, but I got on it. I got all the lower leaves that were bad off. I got the copper on. You can see that white film on the leaf, and that's the copper, and that'll keep the fungus from growing too badly or too successfully. And these are the Roma paste tomatoes. See, there's a leaf that should come off. A little fungusy. And some nice clusters of paste tomatoes there, so I expect to get some good paste tomatoes. And I use the Florida weave method of staking these up, or a variation of it. I didn't have enough stakes to go between every plant, but I think I'm fine. So what I do is stakes in between every 3 plants, and then every week I put another row of string and weave it in between the plants, each direction. And that holds them up pretty nicely. We had some pretty good gusts a couple weeks ago, and everything went fine. And these guys on the other side are more of a, these are the eating tomatoes, the fresh eating tomatoes, mostly heirloom varieties. I think I've got a Cherokee, some Brandywine, and a couple other varieties, Kellogg. You can see these are getting pretty close right here. In fact, yeah, pretty close. It's a green yellow tomato, so it's not going to get a whole lot more colorful. And this is the first year that I've really worked on keeping the suckers down and trying to keep them to a couple of main stems. Over on this side we've got one of our first really nice looking tomatoes, and I think it's ready for picking, so let's see. I have to look up what this one is. I'm not exactly sure. It might be a, I believe it's called Steak Master from my sister Linda. I think that's what we're looking at. But it also might be a Brandywine. Pretty nice looking tomato. Nice size. And these gardens, there are a lot of people growing nightshade plants over the various years, and I haven't grown them here for a few years, but still there are so many spores of fungus in the ground. So that's why you really have to be meticulous about keeping that stuff in check. And you can see our neighbor over here had some really nice plants that he bought from some Amish farmers this spring, and they started out really good, but if you look underneath over here especially, there are quite a few brown and dying plants. So they're going to give them a nice flush of tomatoes early on, but I don't think they're going to be around by September. Over here we've got what was the garlic plot. I had some multiplier onions in here. You can see I pulled a bunch of those out today. And I also had garlic in there, and all that stuff's hanging up now. And I replaced that with some broccoli seedlings that I started at the beginning of July. And then also further down under this row cover, there are some Napa cabbage plants, and yeah, that's all in that row. So it's getting pretty tight between there and the tomatoes, but I had to squeeze them in somewhere. You can see I let quite a few milkweeds grow when they're not in the way, when they're in between rows, because the butterflies need all the help they can get, the monarchs. So the last bed here is a bunch of squash, melon type stuff that we got from the local extension service. They had grown a bunch of stuff for demonstration plots. The unfortunate thing was they had extras. I was going to say they grew a bunch of stuff for demonstration plots, had extras. The unfortunate thing was that these guys got left out in the sun for quite a while without any water. It looked terrible at the end of July, but I had this empty space that had been overgrown by mint the last couple of years. So I threw down black plastic, put some holes in the plastic, and put the scraggly looking plants in, and they just exploded over the last month and a half. You can see here we've got a nice pumpkin going here. I've got him, he's growing up on the fence, so I've got him in a sling, but he's gaining pounds every week, just getting huge. So we're going to have at least one nice pumpkin. Up here we've got my little pollinator bee house. In these little tubes, the little pollinator bees pack them with pollen and eggs, and eventually they'll become larvae next year and hatch out, and we'll have more pollinator bees. I've only got a few left because the mice got into them last winter and ate quite a few of them, so I got to rebuild the population of those. So let's go around the back, which is overgrown by squash and such. I think one of these is a butternut. I haven't found any fruit on it yet, but that can be deceptive because until this morning I didn't think this guy was putting out any fruit, who I didn't know what kind of plant this was. I thought it might be a cuke or something, but this morning I found this guy. We've got a little muskmelon here, and it's kind of grown into the fence and around this piece of pipe which I have weighting the plastic down, but I guess we'll get a good muskmelon out of that. There's a couple other little ones, but it's getting late in the year, so I don't know if we'll really get anything out of those. So I guess that's the garden and yard tour for August 2015.